Hey there, good to see you again. So today we're talking about something that could have a major impact on your finances, especially if you own a home or thinking about selling one. President Trump just said he's considering getting rid of the capital gains tax on house sales. That's a big deal. And if you're a homeowner or someone hoping to become one soon, this could affect you more than you think. Now here's something a lot of folks might not realize. Under current law, if you sell your home and make a profit, you can exclude up to $250,000 of that gain if you're single, or $500,000 if you're married. But those numbers haven't changed since 1997. Home prices have more than doubled since then, but those limits have stayed exactly the same. That means more and more people are starting to owe taxes when they sell their homes, especially in places like California or New York. And guess what? That tax bill can sneak up on people. You might have bought a modest home 20 or 30 years ago, but thanks to rising prices, you could be looking at a six-figure profit now and possibly a six-figure tax problem. So yeah, there's a reason this topic is suddenly back in the spotlight. And before we really get into it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever thought about selling your home but felt stuck because of taxes or other costs? Or do you know someone who's in that situation? Drop a comment below, even if it's just a simple yes or no. I think it's something a lot of people are quietly dealing with. And while you're here, if you enjoy calm, clear explanations like this, consider subscribing. It helps more than you know. So let's start with what Trump actually said. He mentioned this during a meeting in the Oval Office, saying the administration is thinking about no tax on capital gains on houses. That's not just a passing comment. It came right after he signed off on a bill that already added new tax breaks for tipped wages and car loans. So this seems like it's part of a bigger plan. The idea is that by removing the tax on profits from selling a home, people, especially older homeowners, will be more willing to sell. Right now, some folks are sitting on homes they've owned for decades. They've built up equity, but they don't want to sell because they'd lose a big chunk to taxes. So instead, they just stay put. And that's part of why there's so little housing inventory out there. You see, housing markets work best when there's movement. People buying, selling, moving around. But if homeowners feel like they're being punished for selling, they hold on to their homes longer than they might want to. And that makes it harder for younger families to find something they can afford. So then, from the administration's perspective, removing the tax is like unclogging a drain. You get more homes on the market, prices maybe even settle down a bit, and buyers have more choices. Sounds good, right? But also, there's a catch. Actually, a few. First off, the people who would benefit most from this are the ones with the largest profits. Think of someone who bought a home in the 1980s or 90s in San Francisco or Boston. They might have paid $100,000 back then. Now it's worth $1.5 million. Even with the current $500,000 exclusion, they're still looking at paying taxes on $900,000 in gains. That's a big chunk of change. So, eliminating the tax would save them a lot of money. But it doesn't do much for someone who just bought a home a few years ago and hasn't built up much equity yet. In other words, this change could mostly benefit people who are already doing pretty well financially. Now that doesn't make it a bad policy by default, but it does raise questions about fairness. Is it right to remove taxes on profits for a small group of well-off homeowners, while renters and first-time buyers continue to struggle? And speaking of renters, let's talk about another concern: speculation. If real estate becomes even more profitable for investors, we might see more folks buying homes just to flip them or rent them out shorter. That could make the housing market even tougher for everyday buyers. Prices could rise faster. Inventory could tighten up again. So while the policy might help free up some homes, it could also bring new challenges. Another thing to think about is inflation. Right now, interest rates are still pretty high. Mortgage rates are hovering around 7%. That's a huge barrier for first-time buyers. And when prices are already high, adding more investor demand could just make things worse. So even if more homes go up for sale, they might not be affordable for the average buyer. And yeah, one more thing here that gets overlooked. What about adjusting the current tax thresholds instead of removing the tax entirely? A lot of folks are saying, hey, rather than scrapping the tax, why not just raise the limits to reflect today's prices? Like bump them up for inflation. So if the current cap was $500,000 in 1997 dollars, it'd be over $1.2 million today. That would help a lot of people who bought their homes years ago, especially in high-cost areas, without handing out massive windfalls to multi-million-dollar sellers. So then, let's step back for a second. What's really going on here? Well, part of it is economic. The administration wants more people to sell their homes to loosen up the market. But part of it is political too. This proposal fits into a larger strategy of tax cuts that appeal to older and wealthier voters, people who are more likely to be homeowners and more likely to turn out for elections. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just helps to understand the timing and motivation behind it. And if you're a senior who's been thinking about downsizing, or maybe you've got adult kids who are urging you to move, you might be watching this closely. Because even if you love your home, that tax bill could be the one thing holding you back. Removing it might make your decision easier. But also, if you're living off savings or Social Security, you might be thinking, how does this help me? If I'm not selling a house, or I don't even own one, then this doesn't do much at all. And that's a fair point. That's why the conversation around this policy is so divided. For some people, it's a big win. For others, it's just another reminder that wealth often builds on wealth. Now here's a part that's easy to miss. Even though Trump supports the idea, it still has to pass Congress. And that's no sure thing. The No Tax on Home Sales Act has been introduced by Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, but it hasn't made it through either chamber yet. And even some Republicans are worried about how much it would cost. The last tax bill already added over $3 trillion to the debt, and this one could add even more. Fiscal conservatives, especially those who are focused on balancing the budget, may not be thrilled about that. So we'll have to wait and see whether this proposal gains traction or if it becomes more of a political talking point than an actual law. Still, the fact that it's being discussed at all tells us something. The housing market is broken in ways that run deep, and policies like this, even if they don't pass, signal where the political winds are blowing. It also raises a bigger question. Should tax policy reward people for holding on to assets for decades? Or should it help people trying to get a foot in the door for the first time? That's not just a financial question, it's a values one. So yeah, whether or not this policy becomes law, it's worth thinking about what kind of housing system we want to build. One that helps you sell a home tax-free, or one that makes it easier to buy one in the first place. Or maybe, hopefully both. And hey, if this topic made you stop and think, even just for a moment, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Do you think removing the capital gains tax on home sales is fair? Or should the government focus more on helping first-time buyers? Let me know. And if you found this helpful, maybe consider subscribing. I try to keep things clear, practical, and hopefully a little less stressful when it comes to money. So if you want to stay informed without the noise, you're in the right place. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.